plan lowers premiums, increases choices, and improves health care for everyone. Paid for by Friends of Scott Walker.
WS Ag Center in Columbus invites you to their Fall Festival Friday, October 26th. Live radio broadcast Friday morning, October 26th from 7 to 9 a.m. Lots of in-store specials all day long. Great bargains on all bird seed. Get up to $2 off bags of pet food. Visit with all the vendors that are displaying. WS Ag Center is located on Temkin Road, next to the vet clinic just outside Columbus. Remember the date of the Fall Festival, Friday, October 26th. WS Ag is your Kent feed dealer, and it's the place to stock up on your dog and cat food needs, bird seed, and of course hog feeds. Come one, come all to the Fall Festival Friday, October 26th. It runs all day from 9 till 4. Join us for the live radio broadcast Friday morning from 7 till 9. You can even start your Christmas shopping with great bargains on lots of different items, including birdhouses, wind chimes, and so much more. WS Ag in Columbus, the place to be, Friday, October 26th from 9 a.m. till 4.
Hi, folks. This is State Senator Scott Fitzgerald. It's been my honor to represent you in the State Senate. I've worked hard to expand our economy, create jobs, and eliminate wasteful government spending. I believe that if we reduce taxes and let you keep more of your money, the state will be in a much better position to prosper. We've reformed our government in Wisconsin over the last 8 years, and our state is now a leader in the Midwest. Let's not turn back. I'm asking for your vote on November 6th, paid for by Scott Fitzgerald for Senate.
She's mean and she's offensive. She's profane and divisive. She tweets out nasty missives, and Groves Lloyd is extreme. She voted for a socialist. She calls our country terrorist. She ought to be embarrassed, and Groves Lloyd is extreme. Da-da-da-dum.
At a time when our community should be coming together, Lodi Alderwoman Ann Groves Lloyd is saying outrageous things to tear us apart, personally calling political opponents terrorists and cheering on others who called them Nazis and children of Satan, and said people who differed with her on tax policy should be damned to hell. We deserve better from our public officials. Call Alder Lloyd at 608-592-4527 and tell her you want civility and unity, not her brand of hate and division.
And Groves Lloyd is extreme.
Paid for by Jobs First Coalition, Inc.
Discover buried treasure. Discover fun at Cave of the Mounds. See this geologic wonder that was hidden for ages. Daily tours pass a stunning array of colorful crystal formations on paved, lighted walkways. Dig for treasure. Discover fossils. Hike the trails or stroll the gardens. Experience monthly themed events for adults, including live music, Wisconsin tastings, and more. Join us for our popular Cave After Dark series and new summer soirees. Open year-round. Cave of the Mounds, just 25 miles west of Madison.
The bakers of Country Hearth and Village Hearth Breads are proud to support local education with Loaves for Learning, the program that makes it easy to earn money for your school. Enjoy Country Hearth and Village Hearth all-natural breads, buns, bagels, and more, then save the UPC from the package for your school to collect and redeem. Each is worth 5 cents and can be used for books, computers, sports, music, whatever your school needs, up to $10,000 a year. Learn more at loavesforlearning.com. Country Hearth and Village Hearth Breads, baking our best for you.
This is AM 1430 WBEV, streaming online at dailydodge.com. It is time now for today's Community Comment. Here's your host, Craig Warmbold.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon. Welcome to Community Comment. On Community Comment this afternoon, the first of a two-part look at the race for State Assembly District 39. On tomorrow's program, we're going to welcome the Democratic incumbent into the studio for a one-on-one interview, Alicia Barudin. On today's program, the Republican incumbent seeking his fourth term in the Assembly, Mark Bourne. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Good to be here. Nice to be in the, I guess, fairly new studios. New to me, my first time on Community Comment in the video studio here.
The new Daily Dodge studio, video streaming live. We should mention that to our listeners. If you're listening on the radio and you have internet access and you either want to listen to this somewhere away from the radio or watch the program, you can go to the video tab at dailydodge.com. And this is we've only been doing this for a short amount of time, and since the election has swung up, we haven't really had you on to sit down as a state legislator. This is the first time we've had to sit down with you in this capacity in a few months.
Yeah, it's good to be back, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity that WBEV gives me monthly on community comment when we're not in the election cycle to communicate with voters in the district. I think people appreciate it. I know listeners appreciate it. I have people comment, to me on it when I see them places and stuff. It's important in my line of work to be able to, let folks know what's going on and not just have it be just in the news stories that you're writing, things like that. So this is a good opportunity monthly that we've been doing, and now, of course, we're here for the election cycle, so we'll get a chance to talk about, I'm sure, a number of important issues today.
And worth noting, a slight format change from the typical programs that we have. We don't do call-ins during election programming. So we would ask our listeners to refrain from trying to call. This is kind of more of a formal one-on-one between ourselves and the candidates. And we do want to thank you again for joining us. Again, we have your opponent tomorrow. Earlier in the week, we had Michelle Zahn, candidate in the State Assembly District 13 race. State Senator Scott Fitzgerald, her Republican opponent, the incumbent, will be on Tuesday, October 30th. And that's one day before all of you guys meet for a debate at the Beaver Dam Chamber of Commerce offices. So you got some one-on-one opportunities to talk about your views here in advance of that final debate, where everybody will have a chance to meet their opponents, as it were, in that setting. And we'll be broadcasting that as well on dailydodge.com in video and audio. So without further ado, we'd like to kind of take things back to the beginning here during these election opportunities. Folks that may not be familiar with you, if you could maybe just start telling us a little bit about your, the whole biographical information, the resume, if you will, your family life, work history, service organization affiliations, previous elected or appointed positions, currently or formerly held, that you want to talk about.
Okay, well, that was quite a few areas.
Hit the whole the run of the gamut. If you
say, hopefully, we don't run out of time before I finish with this question. But
and we should mention, with this format as well, there are no time limits on any of the answers that you give or anything like that.
Well, good. Well, I'm a lifelong resident of Beaver Dam. Grew up here, went to public school here, and went off to college for 4 years in a private school in Minnesota, but still was here for the holidays and the summers and stuff, working several jobs to pay for school. And then after college, started working for the Dodge County Sheriff's Department in the Corrections Division, and spent a little under 15 years there, the last 12 in the administration. My family has been in what's the 39th Assembly District for 4 generations. We're actually raising the 5th generation. My daughter would be the 5th generation. Great-grandparents farmed in the Pumpkin Center area, and my grandparents moved the family to Beaver Dam, and that's where my parents are, and that's where I grew up. And my wife and I are living here now in Beaver Dam, and happy to be raising our daughter here and participating in the community. As far as community involvement, something I've been very involved in the community, going back to even my childhood. It's something my parents were very involved and are very involved in the community. My mom spent quite a bit of time volunteering at church and at the community theater over several decades. My dad was very involved in the family center, the hockey arena. My brother was a hockey player, and my dad was one of several families that helped build the family center. I remember I was 6 years old at the time, and my dad and other dads of young hockey players up there laying brick, building the building. And so I learned early on about the value of participating in your community, serving your community. And so I think the first community involvement was probably at the church, helping grandma teach Sunday school, things like that. But when I was in high school, I volunteered at the Humane Society. And then after returning from college and stuff, I became involved in a lot of civic groups. I remember in one of my city council races, my opponent, Don Conforti, made a joke that he thought I was too busy to be on the city council because my flyer had so many community involvement things on it, And so there was a lot of groups. Beaver Dam Lake Improvement was one that I was pretty active with. I'm still a member there, but not very active anymore, but I was an officer at one time. The ones that I'm active with now, I would say, are the Historical Society and Leadership Beaver Dam and the Chamber. And Beaver Dam Elks Lodge, that's one that I got involved with 17 years ago, I think, 18 years ago. So I really appreciate the youth and veterans programs they work on. And then I've got some other ones that I've been a member of, and I still maintain that membership, but I just don't have time now with all the time in Madison and things. But I still, keep up the membership to support them, like I do BDLIA, Beaver Dam Arts, Downtown Beaver Dam Inc., Friends of the Marsh, just groups that do good things in their communities. And so not really time to make a meeting there anymore, but still like to support them with a membership. So that's probably most of the community involvements. I'm sure I left a few out, but like I said, it's been an important part of my life, and I'm sure it'll continue to be. And I think the last part was maybe local government or other elected positions.
Sure, generally.
Yeah, I mean, I spent 2 terms on the city council, and served in a variety of committees and such there. And prior to that, I did part of a term on the Police and Fire Commission. I left that term when I was elected to city council. And I did 3 terms, which are concluded now, on the District 13 Committee for the Office of Lawyer Regulation. That's a Supreme Court appointment where attorneys and lay people, so obviously I was a lay person on the board, not an attorney, investigate complaints against attorneys, work with the Office of Lawyer Regulation, and on behalf of the court investigate complaints and then make recommendations to the court on discipline for attorneys. And so that was I did 9 years, 3-year terms on that, and it's maxed at 3 terms. So that's been completed, I think, a year or so ago. I got my thank you letter from the Chief Justice saying thanks for your service. It's done, and that was that. But so those are some of the things I've been involved in locally.
And you're again seeking your 4th term in the Assembly. Tell us about some of the committee assignments that you've had in that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 3 terms, coming up on the end of 3 terms here, and right now, this last term, I was on the Joint Finance Committee, and that was a great opportunity to, that's the committee that crafts the state budget, so got to work on many different parts of state government and things that impact our citizens and our communities here in Wisconsin through that state budget process. I, in the past, have been I was the chair last session of the Public Benefit Reform Committee, where we did a lot of work to try to increase accountability and stop waste and fraud and abuse in our welfare system. Also, I've served on natural resources and sporting heritage, which was one that was important to me to have the opportunity to serve on. It's something that's important in our area. We have a lot of very active sportsmen's groups with the Horicon Marsh in the area, and we have a really great asset there for natural resources and hunting and fishing and that sort, as well as our lakes, Beaver Dam Lake and Sinisippi and Fox Lake just a little to the north of the district and stuff. So that was a good committee to sit on for 2 terms. I don't sit on all those standing committees anymore because of the workload of joint finance, but it was still good to have 4 years on natural resources and sporting heritage. Also in the past had been on, I'm not sure if I'll remember them all, but criminal justice, I did 2 terms on there. Insurance committee, there were a couple more, and they're all on the Facebook or on the website if folks want to go check those out. But also currently I'm still on the Rules Committee, which is kind of a procedural committee, and I serve on the State Capitol and Executive Residence Board, which is a board that protects the history of those 2 buildings. If you want to make changes to either of those buildings that are structural changes or anything, you have to get the approval of that board just to make sure that like a new governor or his spouse or whatever the case might be doesn't try to make big changes to the state-owned building. That was a thing back in the day, and they created this board to help protect the history of those buildings.
Well, let's start out talking about public assistance with the experience on the Public Benefits Reforms Committee. Tell us about some of the key legislation that passed through that committee, and maybe what more needs to be done there.
Well, in the last couple of cycles, we've done quite a bit to try to bring more accountability to the program to reduce the fraud. And we also have done quite a bit to make sure that they are helping people that are on the welfare system get back to work. So I'd say some of the main things are drug testing and work requirements on a number of the programs, because we want to help folks that need some help, but we want to help them in a way that's productive to getting them back into the workforce. And so if you're addicted to drugs, you're going to have a hard time getting a job, because a lot of them drug test, and you're going to have a hard time keeping a job if you're having problems struggling with drugs. So let's get you off of those. So if you're on them, let's get you treatment and get you off of them so that you can get either a job or the training you need to get a job. Same with the training programs. If you're struggling to find a job because you don't have the right skill sets, well, then let's get you into the training program to help you do that. So the program, the welfare program, should not just be, here's your check, good luck. But instead, here's a check to help you get by, and then here are, whether it be treatment, training, whatever, daycare, to help you make those next steps to get back into the workforce. And so I think that really needs to be the focus, and that has been the focus certainly from my colleagues and I the last couple of sessions, and Governor Walker. And I think it's essential for probably two reasons. One, we shouldn't allow the system to be abused. The hardworking taxpayers are paying for it. It should be a helping hand, not a continued handout. I think that's common sense. But the other thing that I think is really important now, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about this, is workforce needs. We need everyone participating in this workforce. We have a lot of job vacancies and not enough people to fill them. We are blessed right now with a really strong economic growth in Wisconsin. Things are going well. Businesses are coming. Businesses are expanding, but they need workers. And, there's a variety of things that we can do for that. And like I said, I think hopefully we'll talk more about it. I think it's one of the top issues that's out there right now. But this welfare is part of that, is making sure that we have everyone participating that can be participating in our workforce.
Foxconn, that prospect bringing a lot of jobs to the state of Wisconsin at a time when we seem to already have plenty of jobs available. The Taiwanese tech giant building a $10 billion LCD screen plant in Mount Pleasant. State taxpayers committed to spending almost $3 billion in job-creating tax breaks, utility road amenities, and more, with, again, thousands of jobs planned. There's been some blowback about the incentives package that's been offered. What's your take on it?
I think it's an incredible opportunity, and it was too good to not take advantage of it. Now, are folks right to be concerned about the incentives? Well, sure, you should ask questions about it. I asked a ton of questions about it. I mean, personally, if it was an option not to incentivize these things, I would think that would be great. But it's not. That's not the real economy that we're dealing in. We're competing with other states. We're competing with other countries sometimes in our global economy. And so we need to compete. And Foxconn is an incredible opportunity to bring high-tech manufacturing, not just to Wisconsin, but to North America, to this hemisphere. This technology right now is all made in Asia, in China mostly, and Taiwan and Japan. And so, just for even like national security purposes, to bring this type of technology to the U.S. is outstanding, and to have it built in Wisconsin is even better. And it's a great opportunity for family supporting careers. The average wage was between $53,000 and $54,000, I believe, plus benefits. And these are not low-paying jobs. These are not minor jobs. These are high-tech jobs. These are engineers. These are folks that are working on computers, computer science degrees. That's why we have our UW system and our technical college system already working on what type of training and what type of degrees will be focused on to supply the training and education necessary to support this type of facility. And I think that you need to look at the fact that the incentives are all things that are just that. They're incentives. They have to do something. They have to spend money on a building. They have to spend money on employing people, or they don't get anything. So it's not like sometimes people make it sound like we're writing some check to this company. And that couldn't be further from the truth. This company is writing big checks to build a building and then getting some incentives back for it. This company is writing checks to Wisconsin workers and then getting some of that money back. And in the case of those incentives for the payroll, this is the same thing that we do in a lot of other businesses. Now, we gave a little bit better rate because of this special technology and the size of this development. But the principle, the incentive for employee wages is the same thing that John Deere got for their expansion at the 101 plant right here in the 39th Assembly District. We gave them incentives for I think 80 some new jobs that are part of that was done just a couple of years ago right here in Horicon. So these type of incentives are not something that's unusual or unheard of. And I think that the opportunity, the high-tech manufacturing, something that Wisconsin has a great history of manufacturing. It's a important part of I like to call it a three-legged stool. Folks have heard me say this on the radio here before, of our economy, of tourism, agriculture, and manufacturing. But we don't have this type of high-tech manufacturing. This is the type of stuff they have in California and Texas and North Carolina. And we see a lot of our top engineering students out of Madison go to Texas, out of UW-Madison, for those type of jobs. And now our Wisconsin kids will have that opportunity plant and at the other suppliers to Foxconn. And who knows? Maybe they'll still want to move away from mom and dad. Those are personal decisions. But at least, they'll have the opportunity to stay in Wisconsin with this type of high-tech manufacturing. And I think that's a really big deal. And I also think that when you look at what's been going on as they've started developing, I think you just have to be trying hard to find reasons not to like it, quite frankly. If you look at the fact that they've bought a North American headquarters, a building for a North American headquarters in downtown Milwaukee. They've bought buildings, and I'm not going to remember them all now, but I know Green Bay, Eau Claire, I think maybe Wausau, I think Madison, for research and development, all in different parts of Wisconsin. These are going to be white-collar jobs in different areas of Wisconsin. In the last month or so, they've entered some agreements. I can't remember now, was it $100 million or $200 million with the UW-Madison and UW-Milwaukee for research. And so, this just keeps paying more dividends for Wisconsin. And you hear people make complaints about incentives. Those are all things they have to earn, like I said. And then they talk about the environment. I want folks to understand very clearly that no changes were made to the environmental laws of Wisconsin or the United States. They have to comply with all of the air, all of the water regulations that are in place. The only environmental changes that were ever part of this were whether or not there had to be some type of study beforehand. And this very same study was waived for the Bucks Arena, for example. So it's not something that's required for every development. It's not unusual to go about it this way. And so just because people saw that there's something environmental here, well, it was one small pre-construction study. All of the laws are in place. And then you look at what they've done since this started, and they said they were going to put in a several $million water filtration system. Top technology for tracking their air quality and things like that. I mean, these are all things that have been out in the media since this process has moved along. So far, you have a company that's trying to make a major investment in Wisconsin and is doing a number of things technology-wise and stuff to make that as safe and the best that it can be, and is investing in communities all over the state for research and North American headquarters and things like that. So right now there's an awful lot of winning going on with Foxconn.
Our guest is State Representative Mark Bourne. He is the Republican incumbent in the race for the State Assembly District 39 seat, seeking his 4th consecutive term in the lower house. Our guest on tomorrow's program will be his Democratic challenger, Alicia Barudin, sitting down for a one-on-one conversation that'll also be broadcast at this time and streamed in audio and video format at dailydodge.com, just as today's program is. A note to those of you who may be listening on the radio with an internet connection, dailydodge.com under the video tab. We do have to take a break. We will be back here in just a few minutes.
In the race for state assembly, being a black belt in karate might come in handy for candidate John Plummer. John Plummer wants to take his karate skills to Madison to defend us from career politicians. As our state representative, he'll work to slash healthcare costs, defend people with pre-existing conditions, and keep taxes low on families and seniors. They could use a good chop. On November 6th, vote for a guy who will protect us from career politicians and their bad ideas. Vote John Plummer for state assembly.
Paid for by Plummer for Assembly.
Don't miss the Fleet Farm Truckload Savings Event this Friday through Sunday. We're passing big savings onto you with the best deals, like Remington 87-quart storage trunks on sale for $14.99. KT Wild Bird Food, 20-pound bags are 2 for $8. Valvoline Conventional Oil, 5 quarts are only $13.99. And save $100 on the Bandit 18-foot ladder stand for 3 days only. Truckload season is Fleet Farm season. Fleet Farm. Built for real life.
This Green and Gold Fix is brought to you by Countryside Auto Group, where savings come standard.
The Packers get back to work this week, coming off their bye. They visit the 7-0 LA Rams this Sunday. The team will leave for California on Friday, a day earlier than usual. Here's Coach Mike McCarthy on this week's game plan.
Well, I'm planning for this week's schedule is just move everything up a day. So tomorrow will be a Wednesday, have normal Wednesday installation and work all the way through. So then Friday would be a Saturday type day. We'll travel late Friday afternoon, early Friday afternoon out to LA, get there obviously Friday night, and then we'll work out there Saturday. We got obviously 3 weeks of heavy travel, so trying to take advantage of coming off the bye week.
We'll see if the extra day on the West Coast helps out the Packers Sunday when they face the undefeated LA Rams. Kickoff from the LA Coliseum is set for 3:25.
How does Social Security and Medicare work?
When is it best for you to receive these benefits?
How does this affect you if you want to keep working?
Hi, this is Sandy
and Emily
from Higher Insurance and Estate Planning.
We're hosting a free class to help educate and inform you about Medicare and Social Security benefits and help you decide what's best for your future.
To attend this free course, call us at Higher Insurance and Estate Planning at 887-0580. That's 887-0580.
I'm Glenn Grothman, and I won't take a dime from pharmaceutical companies. That's because here in America, we consume 80% of the world's painkillers with only 6% of the world's population. I introduced legislation restricting the amount of pills per prescription and created a new anti-opioid task force in Congress. American medical costs are way too high, and one more grieving Wisconsin family is one too many. That's why I fight for you rather than the drug companies. I'm Glenn Grothman, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Glenn Grothman for Congress.
You will definitely want to swing by Beaver Dam Piggly Wiggly this week and check out the great buys you'll find throughout the store. We'll start off with certified Angus beef fresh ground chuck in the family pack, just $2.99 a pound. Oh, it's that time of the year, and are they ever tasty? Washington State Honeycrisp apples are 99 cents a pound. The 16-ounce package of Sugardale bacon is only $2.99. Get certified Angus beef boneless English cut chuck roast, just $2.99 a pound. How about California Dole iceberg lettuce, just 99 cents each? And Haas avocados, make up some great guacamole tonight, is only 88 cents each at Beaver Dam Piggly Wiggly on the beautiful east side of Beaver Dam. While you're there, check out the many great bargains throughout the store, including the bakery, the deli, the meat department, produce, and of course that fantastic liquor department. Beaver Dam Piggly Wiggly on the beautiful east side of Beaver Dam.
On the job site
at your desk, even in your car. Back pain causes discomfort and lost productivity in 8 of 10 Americans. But Dr. Benjamin Shire and the chiropractic team at BDCH treats everything from back pain to migraines. Starting with a thorough evaluation, Dr. Shire will develop a clear treatment plan. He's accepting new patients, and you don't even need a referral. Call BDCH at 920-821-0071 to schedule an appointment.
This is AM 1430 WBEV. Beaver Dam. Take advantage of the Countryside Ford Quick Lane Works package. Oil change, tire rotation, and free inspection, $39.95. No appointment necessary. Available Monday through Saturday at Countryside Ford, 330 Transit Road, Columbus. It is time once again for more of today's community comment. Here is your host, Craig Warmbold.
And our guest is State Representative Mark Bourne, the Republican incumbent in State Assembly District 39. He's facing a challenge from Democrat Alicia Barutin, who will be our guest on tomorrow's program. Let's start this segment talking a little bit about your bid for re-election. Why are you seeking another term?
Well, I think some of the reasons that I'm seeking another term are the same as why I sought it in the first place. Part of it was I had a young child at home, and I was worried about the future. I wanted to make sure that the Wisconsin that she grows up in is still a great place to live and grow up as a kid. I think another reason is this district has had strong conservative representation for more than 50 years. Probably more than that, but I just go back that segment because I know personally the 3 previous people that have served in what's now most of the 39th Assembly District, and they all were friends of mine. One of them's deceased now. They were all mentors, and I learned a lot from them. And wanted to make sure that when Jeff Fitzgerald decided to not run 6 years ago, that we had a strong conservative continuing to represent this area. And so I think both the concerns for future and our kids and the concerns of making sure that we continue to have a strong common sense conservative representative in Madison are certainly 2 reasons why I'm running for re-election. I would also say, though, that when I look at what we've been able to accomplish the last 6 years, some of the things that I've been able to accomplish for folks on a local level, I'm proud of that, and I see opportunities to continue to build on some of that. So I want an opportunity to do that. And also, when you look at the success we're having in Wisconsin right now, the way this state is growing, the economic growth that allows us to have more revenues in state government that we can invest in priorities like the record investment in education this time, in this last budget, I don't want to go backwards. I look at the rhetoric from the other side right now, and I'm concerned that that's going to take us backwards, and that's the last thing we need to do right now as a state. And so that certainly in some ways inspires me as I'm on the campaign trail to talk about how we're winning in Wisconsin right now and how we can continue to do that. And that's definitely a large part of why I decided to seek re-election.
What are some of your specific goals if re-elected, legislatively speaking?
I think that education is going to continue to be a priority. We made some great investments this time, and I was glad that we were able to, after the budget process, do more for low-spending schools, because that was something we tried to do in the budget. We couldn't quite get the compromise, and then we were able to accomplish it later on in the session. I think that was an important one that I've been working on for several years to try to help the schools that have that were conservative and not spending as much years ago. Try to help them catch up a little bit and make sure that all the kids, no matter what part of the state you live in rural areas or whatnot, have similar opportunities in our school system. And special education is something that I've been working on for a few years, and this budget we were able to put in additional money for high-cost special education, which was a great step in the right direction. But I'd still like to see a greater investment in special education. So that's something I want to work on in the next budget process. And I think that, there's certainly going to be other areas that I'm going to continue to work on that I have worked on. Corrections reform is going to be a big one. Those are some committees that we have going on right now that I'm on, in juvenile justice and correction space needs. And I continue to work on bills that impact the area as well as the state, like the protective status for county jailers. We've talked about that before on the radio. That's something that's been worked on for over 30 years. Got real close this session with a compromise, thought we had it, but one senator was able to stop it in his committee. So we're certainly going to try to move that next session. And we'll continue to look at things in healthcare, ways to try to help with access and help people in areas of mental health and things of that type, and also to continue to try to help add to the workforce in healthcare. This is something I've been working with the medical schools, the 2 medical schools on, and we've made investments in the last 2 for sure, I think maybe 3 budgets now, in getting more residency programs in rural areas to try to get more medical and mental health providers into rural areas of Wisconsin. And then the last thing I would say on what I'm going to work on is I don't know until a constituent brings the idea to me. And I say that because most of the bills that I've worked on in the last 6 years are ideas from local folks that call me up or stop me in a local store or whatever the case might be and say, hey, why do we do this way? Or can you help fix this? Or I'm having this problem with this state agency. Can we do something about it? And those are, oftentimes the best legislation once we dig into the problem and figure out how to fix it, and some of the most rewarding parts of the job. And so when I look back on, sometimes it's a bill, and my first bill, which we've talked about on the air before, where it was, a local family of a soldier killed in a combat zone over in Afghanistan, and the family was told that he had a Wisconsin state income tax liability after his death, and I thought that must be wrong, right? That's not right, but you look into it, and sure enough, that's not an area where we mirrored the federal tax law, so we fixed it. So no longer does a family have a tax liability when one of their loved ones is killed serving their country here in Wisconsin. And other things like a local business person's coming up to me and saying, why do we have to do things this way in tracking this part of our business? It doesn't seem to make any sense. We don't use it for anything. The government doesn't use it for anything. And you look into it and you go, you're right. No one wants it. No one needs it. Why are we making you do this? And so you make those little improvements to help, a small business operate just a little bit better in Wisconsin. And those are great opportunities. And sometimes it doesn't have to be legislation. Sometimes it can be as simple as just helping work through an agency. And we've talked before about the community theater here in Beaver Dam, trying to get for several years, I think for more than a decade, trying to get their tax exemption status. And they talked to state officials and local officials, and they still were having to pay property taxes. And so, the managing director there called me and said, can we sit down and talk about this? I went to his office, sat down and talked about it. They're like, this is really important as this is a few years ago, they're getting ready to start building their new theater that's almost done now downtown. And we really need to figure out how to get tax exempt. We should be tax exempt. They were right, they should be. So we just started working on it and ended up, figuring out with the Department of Revenue that really the law just wasn't being interpreted right here by the assessor. And so we get revenue and the city assessor and the city together and connect all the dots and suddenly they're tax exempt after many years of trying to work on that. But those are the opportunities to make a difference in your community, and I appreciate it when folks bring that stuff to my attention, and I appreciate having the opportunity to work on those things.
On the topic of health care, should the state, if given that responsibility, mandate health providers, mandate them to require coverage for pre-existing conditions?
Sure. Yeah, we've in the Assembly we passed legislation this spring that would have ensured protection for pre-existing conditions. I've already voted for that. I'll vote for it again if that's what needs to be done. But yeah, that's something that should be done. And you know, that's obviously a top one in healthcare. But there's a lot of other things in healthcare that we're working on that are opportunities to improve access and costs. We've done things to allow more association, to allow businesses to work together, to pool, to try to drive down costs. There's options for direct care. We passed a bill in the Assembly that would try to make that a little bit easier. I see there's a company in Beaver Dam now that's offering that. I don't know any of the details of it or anything. I'm not trying to do a commercial, but I just saw a business on the north side that's, you know, bringing that type of idea, opportunity to the area. We invested money in something that they call reinsurance to bring down the costs of insurance for folks that are operating on the exchanges here in Wisconsin. That's a huge deal. You know, one of the biggest problems with the so-called Affordable Care Act is that it was driving the costs and it wasn't affordable. And we had insurance companies leaving the exchanges in many states, including Wisconsin, so that there was less policies available to Wisconsin residents, and they were expensive. And so by the state investing in that and in that reinsurance plan, we are seeing 2019 rates lower. And we also have seen at least one major company come back into the Wisconsin market. They announced that a month or two ago already, which is great. That's more competition and opportunity for Wisconsin families. So we've made some good investments and worked on some good things in healthcare. And when you look at the state budget, there's actually a ton of investment in healthcare opportunities. You've got 2 new mental health programs for schools. I know local schools in Waupun and Beaver Dam for sure have gotten some of those grants. There's more money for dementia care specialists in our counties to help families that are struggling with that. There's more money for county health departments in fighting communicable diseases. There is more money in this budget for nursing home, for folks that work in nursing homes and assisted living facilities and home care. And I'm sure there's more, but I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. But that was a few of them of, you know, investments that we made because, again, of our strong economic growth in Wisconsin right now, where we have funds available to not just cut taxes and return some of that money to the taxpayers, but also make investments in public health.
State Representative Mark Bourne, our guest here. He is the Republican incumbent seeking a 4th term in State Assembly District 39. His Democratic challenger, Alicia Barudin, will sit down with us in a one-on-one interview tomorrow at this same time here on AM 1430 WBEV's Community Comment, streaming live in audio and video formats at dailydodge.com. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
So much to see. McKinstry's Home Furnishings. So much to save. McKinstry's Home Furnishings.
During election season, the candidates talk about lowering your taxes, but McKinstry's Home Furnishings is paying your tax for you, announcing their huge tax-free sale going on now. For a very limited time, now through Monday, McKinstry's will pay the sales tax on your purchase. That means huge savings for you store-wide. Save big on all their name brand furnishings, including Simmons, La-Z-Boy, England, Riverside, Marshfield, Symbol mattresses, and much more. And the best part is, McKinstry's Home Furnishings will pay the sales tax on your purchase. That means the more you buy, the more you save. Delivery is free, financing is free, and tax is free. Don't miss the tax-free sale going on now. Furnishings, downtown Beaver Dam.
Year after year, McKinstry's.
I'm Glenn Grothman, and I won't take a dime from pharmaceutical companies. That's because here in America, we consume 80% of the world's painkillers with only 6% of the world's population. I introduced legislation restricting the amount of pills per prescription and created a new anti-opioid task force in Congress. American medical costs are way too high, and one more grieving Wisconsin family is one too many. That's why I fight for you rather than the drug companies. I'm Glenn Grothman, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Glenn Grothman for Congress.
Fleet Farm has everything you need for every season of life. Whether it's I'll fix it myself season or nothing keeps me warmer than Carhartt season. Get what you need for cookies are the best after-school snack season. Nothing a new coat of paint can't fix season. And even squeeze in one last camping trip season. Fleet Farm is built for every season. Fleet Farm, built for real life.
Hi, Scott Walker here. Nothing is more important than ensuring access to quality and affordable health care for our families and seniors. That's why we eliminated the waiting list for children who need long-term care and expanded family care. And Wisconsin is now ranked first in the nation for healthcare quality. But Obamacare premiums skyrocketed by 44% this year, and many families just can't afford to pay for their health care. Washington keeps promising to fix the problem, but it never happens. So we took action. Our bipartisan plan will lower premiums by 3.5%. My opponent wants to expand Medicaid to people with higher incomes. When other states did that, their premiums went up. We have a better way. Our plan lowers premiums, increases choices, and improves health care for everyone. Paid for by Friends of Scott Walker.
I bet you wonder what you're going to be this year, because every Halloween you come in, you get to be something new again.
All right, time to get to Goodwill and start building my Halloween costume. Let's see, I love baseball and horror movies. If I could just...
Do the mash. Do the costume mash.
Yeah, I'll mash them together and be Field of Screams.
The costume mash.
Amazing.
Visit AmazingGoodwill.com for costume ideas and store locations.
At Benvenuto's in Beaver Dam, the bonus deal is back starting on November 5th through January 13th. Purchase $50 worth of gift cards in any denomination and receive a free lunch, a $10 value off our lunch menu. Buy $100 worth of gift cards in any denomination and get 2 free lunches, plus free dessert or a glass of wine for dinner. Benvenuto's Italian Grill is Beaver Dam's premier dining choice, and now you can gift it to your friends and gift yourself too. It's never too soon to start getting ready for the holidays.
Hey Mom, hey Dad, caregivers, everyone. I have something important to tell you. You are your child's #1 brain builder. You see, a baby's brain starts learning right at birth. By kindergarten, 90% of the brain development has already happened. This means you are the single most important person in helping your child's brain grow. You are your child's #1 brain builder. Visit talkreadplaywi.com. Download the free app and start brain building today.
This is AM 1430 WBEV, streaming online at dailydodge.com. Time once again for more of today's community comment. Here's your host, Craig Warmbold.
Well, thank you very much. Our guest here on Community Comment today, continuing our conversation with Republican incumbent Mark Bourne, vying for his 4th term in State Assembly District 39. His Democratic challenger, Alicia Barudin, will be our guest on tomorrow's program at this time. Let's talk a little bit about, this is a story that's been making a lot of local news headlines. We're covering city council meetings. More and more of these city councils are adopting resolutions encouraging the legislature to close what is called by some the dark store loophole. The League of Wisconsin Municipalities defines the loophole as allowing the bigger box stores to lower their property tax bill by having their property assessed as if no one is in the business. What's your position on the property tax assessment for such stores?
Yeah, there's actually 2 parts to this, and the dark store is one part of it, and that one is a little bit easier, I think, to wrap your brain around, so to speak, and to say, that I don't think it's fair to assess properties based on vacant stores. And so that's a bill one of two bills that's in the legislature that I signed on to and I could support in its current form. I signed on as a co-sponsor. And so, I would like to see, I'd certainly support fixing that. Like I said, I'm on the bill. The second bill, the companion bill to it, and the other part that impacts this assessment issue is sometimes referred to as the Walgreens, because they were one of the first ones to win the lawsuit on this front. And the problem with it is that it creates a situation where if businesses are getting their assessments reduced, the cities and local governments are still going to collect their money from somewhere, and that shifts that burden onto the property taxpayer, the residential property taxpayer. And that's a great concern to these local officials that are putting out these things that you just mentioned, and also to me. I don't want to see residential property have a hard impact on their property taxes. I also, because we have worked so hard at the state level to keep property taxes lower, this works directly against that. The problem is the solution isn't that easy. We're put in this situation because municipalities were assessing these businesses beyond what the law allows. And that's why these businesses are winning these lawsuits. It says it's a loophole, but really, property taxes in Wisconsin by law are supposed to be about the value of the property, not about the value of the business. And when they try to assess these businesses for more because they think the business is worth more, then they ended up in these lawsuits and they were losing. So now we've got this situation, and the legislation tries to fix that by allowing them to tax on value instead of the business, instead of just value of the property. Well, I have a major concern about that, because what does that mean for all these other businesses? What does it mean for our small family businesses here in Beaver Dam if we change the law on how these factories and things can be assessed? It's one thing when apparently local assessors were doing it to some of these retail stores, but when we expand what you can consider to charge for property taxes in Wisconsin, that could have a negative impact on other businesses. And I'm not looking to raise property taxes on anyone. So this isn't an easy solution. If it was an easy solution, it would have been done already. And, we're like other states. Michigan's in the same boat. Their courts are involved, just like the courts are here. And the legislature there hasn't figured out a remedy yet either. And at the end of the day, for me, the most important thing is to protect residential property owners from seeing a huge tax increase. So if we have to do something drastic to protect that, that's what we'll have to do. But I don't know what the answer is here yet. We have a study committee working on it in the legislature right now this summer. I don't know if they're going to find a solution, but it's a complex problem. It's a major concern because it works, like I said, directly against what we've been trying to do in the Republican-controlled legislature and with Governor Walker to lower property tax burdens in Wisconsin. And now we've got these assessors that have inflated them on businesses. They're losing the lawsuits. The cities are looking to get their money from somewhere, and we got to figure out how to make this work. It's going to be a difficult one.
Do you think that minimum wage should be adjusted with inflation on an annual basis?
No, I don't think that, for a couple reasons. One, I don't think government getting involved in artificially inflating wages helps anyone in the long run. And also, with the strong economy we have right now in Wisconsin and all the jobs that are available, workforce the workforce shortages are increasing wages already. We see steady wage growth in Wisconsin and in a lot of states. And there are a lot of opportunities out there, and I don't see why we would get involved in making changes to the minimum wage at this time.
What's your position on gun control as it relates to assault weapons and bump stocks?
Well, I think bump stocks should already be considered illegal because it's already illegal to modify a weapon to make it automatic. Automatic weapons are illegal. And the bump stock modifies the gun in a way to make it fire more like it's automatic. So, if the current laws were enforced, I would think that should already be illegal. So I don't have any problem with the federal government, clarifying that or making it clear that those are not something we need in our society. I also think that if you go to a gun store, you couldn't buy one. They're not something that's readily available. It's more of an internet thing. And then as far as so-called assault weapons, that's a media-created term. There aren't really any guns that are actually assault weapons. The guns are defined by caliber and what type of action it uses and things like that. You couldn't walk into a gun store and say, I'd like to buy an assault weapon. They would, first of all, be very concerned by you using that term, and second of all, they wouldn't know what gun to show you because there's not like a gun that says that on its name. And so I think that, no, I'm not interested in banning other guns or anything like that. I don't think that the problems that our society faces right now is about banning guns. I think it's about working to make our communities safer, including schools. That's why we made investments in school safety, and a lot of local schools got those grants. It's also about investing in mental health, both in schools with the 2 brand new mental health grant programs that I mentioned earlier that we put in the state budget, but also throughout the state for folks of all ages. And that's why we've expanded the child psychiatric program in this last budget. That's through the Medical College of Wisconsin. That's why we've looked at ways to bring more, like I said, healthcare and mental health providers to other parts of the state. That's why you see more. I know one of the local pharmacies advertises on this station in the past about the telemedicine that's available at that pharmacy for mental health care. And so I think those are areas that are more important to focus on than how we can regulate more an industry that's already heavily regulated.
What is your position on legislative redistricting in Wisconsin? Do you think elected officials should be responsible for drawing district boundaries, or should that responsibility be, for example, handled by a nonpartisan third party?
Well, ultimately, definitely elected officials need to be responsible for redistricting. But I don't think it's entirely an either-or thing like your question put out there. I mean, the state constitution makes it clear that it's the responsibility of the legislature. I don't think we should change that. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not open to something similar to the Iowa model where we could allow some sort of a nonpartisan group to work on that, and then ultimately it would be a vote of the legislature still, because I think there's a few things that I have concerns about here when I'm saying I'm open to it. That's why I'm not saying that I'm supporting the current version of the bill or anything like that, because I think there's 2 things that are very important that we need to address that don't really fit in the Iowa model, because their stuff is a little different. Like they have, for example, a part where the Supreme Court becomes automatically involved if there's an impasse and things, and we don't have that in our state constitution. So the 2 things that I'm concerned about is, can we create a really nonpartisan staff, bureaucracy, whatever you want to call it? When you look at what happened with the Government Accountability Board, we created what was supposed to be a nonpartisan group to manage our elections. It was supposed to be a model for the country, and no one else did it anywhere in the country. It turned out to be a hyper-partisan failure, and when you look at what came out of some of the John Doe investigation on the incredibly ridiculous partisan things that staff at the GAB were doing, keeping files of opposition research on only Republican members of the legislature in what was supposed to be a nonpartisan group, that's of grave concern. It should be of grave concern to the citizens of Wisconsin. So if we are going to create such a process, we have to figure out how we put protections in place to make sure that doesn't happen again, because otherwise people can't have faith in that nonpartisan system. And the second part I've already kind of mentioned at the start when I took issue with the way you phrased the question a little bit was ultimately elected officials have to vote on this. Elected officials have to be the ones that are ultimately responsible. It's never okay, in my estimation, to have unelected bureaucrats have the final say. They can do the work, they can develop the maps, potentially that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, folks that are directly responsible to the citizens of Wisconsin that are elected have to have the final say in redistricting or any other law that's created in Wisconsin. That's just a simple, to me, a foundation of our system. But if we can find a way to, make sure that those two concerns are met, I'm open to looking at it, sure.
There's been a lot of talk about road construction needs in the state of Wisconsin recently, it seems. What's your take on the road situation, and if re-elected, what would your plan be?
Well, I think that we've made significant investments in the roads. There's no doubt about that. But certainly because of the aging interstate system, we have a lot of expenses in our road budget that need to be addressed. I think that more of the focus from my perspective needs to be on long-term funding solutions. And so that's what I've been talking with folks more about. The gas tax is kind of a thing of the past, or it will be. More and more research and development in the car companies is being focused on electric cars and other types of fuel sources. And you see major companies like Amazon, doing deliveries with electric cars and drones and things. And so none of those things are going to pay the gas tax down the road. So we need to find a long-term funding solution. I certainly worked with my Assembly Republican colleagues this last budget cycle to put forward ideas. They weren't ready for prime time yet, so to speak, in the legislative process. But that doesn't mean that they're not, that wasn't important to do and that they weren't good ideas. It just, the legislative process, when you're going to make a major reform like this, it takes time. And folks need to be ready and comfortable with new ideas, because there are things not to like about other funding sources, like mileage fees or open road tolling are kind of the two that are talked about most nationally. There's pluses and minuses with both of them. It's a major change. We've had gas tax for a long time that funds most of our roads. So we're going to have to get serious about having those public discussions and figure out a path long-term for funding. I think it's good that we held down borrowing this time for transportation. That was a priority for our Assembly Republican caucus, and then certainly something that we were able to work out with the Senate and the governor to reduce borrowing. Or to eliminate it in this budget, so that we weren't continuing to add to the debt service for transportation. I think it's at a reasonable level, and so I don't want to continue to pile on to that. I want to find long-term funding solutions. And hopefully the next session, those discussions will continue. I know they will, certainly from my perspective.
Let's talk a little bit about corrections. Is the state of Wisconsin doing enough to lower the recidivism rate, that is the rate at which offenders re-offend?
Yeah, I think we're doing a lot of good things. I mean, I don't know what the magic number is or what enough is, I guess, in the question there. But we look at our expansions of programs like Windows to Work that help people that are nearing release transition out of prison and into workforce and get the skills they need and things like that. We have a lot of skills training in our prison systems. I've had an opportunity in the last year to tour a number of prisons with my work on the Prison Facilities Committee, and there's certainly a lot of good vocational and other types of education and going on in the system. And so, yeah, I think that we have a lot of good stuff there. I think there is opportunities for some reform. There's probably some opportunities for some sentencing reform. It's nowhere near what some of the Democrats have been advocating for. We're not going to release half of our prison population. That would be releasing violent offenders. But there is probably some room for small percentages of nonviolent offenders to be either released sooner or perhaps never incarcerated at all, and look at other alternatives for incarceration. But I think some of these areas too, society is going to have just a real conversation on what folks are comfortable with, because right now we are locking up a lot of repeat OWI, operating while intoxicated drunk driver offenders. And that's something that's been a real priority of the Milwaukee media for the last several years, to crack down on drunken driving. And in the legislature we've been creating more levels of felonies for 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, offense drunk driving. And technically speaking, that's a nonviolent offender. If they didn't get in an accident, they didn't hurt anyone except for themselves. Sometimes just thankfully by the grace of God they didn't, because there's certainly plenty of stories that you've reported on of accidents and things that take lives and cause major injuries and stuff too. But, so that's the type of stuff when people say, well, we don't want all those nonviolent offenders in there. Okay, really? Because what we've been hearing from the public, and especially from the Milwaukee media, is we need to be tougher on drunken driving. So we have been. And part of how we're filling our prisons right now is with 4th and 5th offense drunk drivers for a couple of years. So, is there a different way we should be doing that? Because that's not the feedback we've been getting. And so, people say treatment. Well, that's what we did with them at offense 1 and 2 and 3, and and even when they're in at 4 and 5, they're still getting treatment. But it doesn't seem to be working. So, do we have to protect the public and put them in prison, or is there another way to do it? And I'm not sure I have the answer to that. I just know that you can't have it both ways. The constituent can't tell me you're not being tough enough on drunk driving, get tougher. I want these people off the street. So then we do that, and then they can't. But then on the other hand, I don't want all these nonviolent offenders, and I don't want to pay for that. Well, that's the same person in the two scenarios there. So those are all part of the discussion that we need to have, and it's still not. It's still, like I said, less than a quarter of folks in our state prison right now are nonviolent offenders. So the idea that we could do, major reform that would get a lot of people out of prison is just not realistic. We're not going to get the majority out that way, but we can get some out, and then we can do other reforms on our facilities and build some new facilities that are run with less staff, safer and more effective and cheaper. That's part of what the facilities committee is working on. So there's opportunities for broad reform there. It's something that certainly with my years of experience in corrections and stuff, and as well as my desire to save money and run an effective and safe system, that I'm happy to work on, and I'm going to be working on, I'm sure, moving forward, just as I have been in these two committees right now, and in this last state budget. The corrections was an area that I worked on a lot. So moving forward, there's opportunities, but I don't want people to think that it's realistic that we're going to somehow cut our prison population by major numbers or anything.
Should the marijuana users that are incarcerated in state prisons be reconsidered?
I think that, we can have those conversations, and I think that maybe we can look at alternatives for incarceration on some of those. But I think it also has to be clear the difference between a user. You're talking about really small numbers in our prison system that are actually just marijuana users. A lot of them either have other drugs or they were dealing and things. Dealing's a whole different thing. And so I think that, we can look at that, but really it's just a little bit around the edges.
A state agency last year said it can no longer enforce a rule that requires fire sprinklers for apartment buildings with 3 to 20 units. The Department of Safety and Professional Services cites a state law that says agencies cannot write and enforce rules stricter than what the law actually says. We referenced that a little bit earlier in a different context. And the last law passed by the governor and legislature called for sprinklers only in buildings with 20 or more units. Some fire officials, including the fire chief here in Beaver Dam, say it's a bad idea not to have sprinkler systems inside apartments with less than 20 units. Do you feel the law needs to be changed to require sprinklers in apartment units of 3 to 20 as well as those 20 and above?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to work on this. I've talked with Chief Mantle just in passing, bumping into him a couple of times about this, and we've agreed that we need to talk about it after the election to figure out, what the best path is on this. And I've also mentioned to the Builders Association when I met with them on a different topic that this was something that I wanted to look into. So I think we're going to have to work with the industry and the fire folks to figure out what the magic number is. And I think that hopefully we can find a reasonable path to improve this. I don't think that we need to be to the level that some fire officials think we're requiring sprinklers in single-family homes, because that's some national groups and some, I'm sure, local chiefs and stuff would support that. I haven't talked specifically with Chief Mantle about that, but that's something that's being advocated on a national level by some groups. I don't think that that's reasonable. I also think that, we're going to have to look at things like how many stories the facility is. I think that, for example, I know the chief was upset about the building that's going on the north side right now. That was at some 80-some units, I think, but it's all grade level. There's no second story. You know, I think that's a much different discussion than multi-level facilities. When it's all grade level like that, it's designed much more like a home, just attached homes, but where you have ingress and egress doors on different sides and things like that, you know, where there are other things that they do to design these to make them safer. And so we could get into a lot of detail on this because we have started looking into it already. You know, there are things that you can see, and you reported several months ago about a fire in the Spring Isle apartment that was, you know, confined to one apartment, basically with the one bedroom in the apartment. And that's because it was designed, not because there's a sprinkler in there, but because the buildings are designed in such a way with firewalls and stuff that those things are meant to move slowly. And, you know, things that weren't built a long time ago, like the 3rd Street building, you know, so there are things already in new construction that make them a lot safer. And that's part of why some people question the need for the additional cost of the sprinkler when you have other things that make them safer for fires already. And so that's all going to have to be part of the discussion. But I think that both with the number of tragedies we've had on a local level, and I respect the chief's passion on this, so I've told him I want to sit down with him, I want to work with him on this to see if we can improve that law.
Finally today, why should voters in November select Mark Bourne as the representative in State Assembly District 39?
I think maybe to boil it down as simple as I can, we've already covered it in some ways, to say that Wisconsin's moving in the right direction. This is not the time to go backwards. 6 years ago when I ran the first time, and every time I have reapplied for this job, every 2 years since then, I've always promised to the voters that I would take the common sense conservative values of this district to Madison. That's exactly what I've done. We're seeing great success right now in our state because of those type of values being represented in Madison, in our reforms and the decisions that are made there. And I think that we need to keep building on that. So I certainly, as always, respectfully ask the voters of the 39th Assembly District for their support again on November 6th.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Again, State Representative Mark Bourne seeking his 4th consecutive term in the State Assembly District 39. His challenger, Democrat Alicia Barudna Beaver Dam, will be our guest on tomorrow's program at this very same time, starting at 12:35 on AM 1430 WBEV. Like this program, we will also be streaming it live in audio and video at dailydodge.com. If you want to watch the video, go under the video tab. You'll be able to see the video of today's program immediately following tomorrow's program. We'll put them both up at the same time in audio and video podcast form for those of you that would like to listen back or those who haven't heard it for the first time. Again, dailydodge.com, the location for that. Also, a continuation of our conversation with the candidates in State Senate District 13. Earlier this week, on Monday, we had an opportunity to sit down with Michelle Zahn. She is the Democrat that is challenging State Senator Scott Fitzgerald for that District 13 seat. We sat down with Michelle on Monday. We'll be sitting down with State Senator Scott Fitzgerald this coming Tuesday, October 30th, also at 12:35. At that time, both of those conversations would be available on dailydodge.com as well. And a reminder that all 4 of the candidates that we're speaking with here as part of our election coverage will be debate-style format on Wednesday, October 31st, starting at 7 p.m., live from the Beaver Dam Veterans Center. We'll be broadcasting that in video and audio formats on dailydodge.com. And we would invite you to also attend that in person if you would like, as it is an event that is open to the public at the Beaver Dam Veterans Center. Again, I want to thank our guest for joining us today, Mark Bourne, today on Community Comment. Until tomorrow's program, that's going to do it for today's program.
WS Ag Center in Columbus invites you to their Fall Festival Friday, October 26th. Live radio broadcast Friday morning, October 26th from 7 to 9 a.m. Lots of in-store specials all day long. Great bargains on all bird seed. Get up to $2 off bags of pet food. Visit with all the vendors that are displaying. WS Ag Center is located on Temkin Road, next to the vet clinic just outside Columbus. Remember the date of the Fall Festival, Friday, October 26th. WS Ag is your Kent feed dealer, and it's the place to stock up on your dog and cat food needs, bird seed, and of course hog feeds. Come one, come all to the Fall Festival, Friday, October 26th. It runs all day from 9 till 4. Join us for the live radio broadcast Friday morning from 7 till 9. You can even start your Christmas shopping with great bargains on lots of different items, including birdhouses, wind chimes, and so much more. WS Ag in Columbus, the place to be, Friday, October 26th from 9 a.m. till 4.
Listen to WBEV online anytime at daily.com.